So last year at Reusable, at PAC Expo in the spring, we talked about or the fall, we talked about the ROI calculator. And at that point, we talked about the fact that we were working on a technical white paper, which we're going to talk about here today. So appreciate everybody coming. And then what you're going to find is back on the, there's a QR code at the reception area of the booth that has a QR code that will take you to where the white paper is posted on the Technology Working Group Hub on the RPA side. So I'm Rob Franzo. I am with Qualcomm Technologies, and I chair the Technical Working Group. And today I'm joined by 5 members of the working group, and I'll just have them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with the Q&A.
Sure. Okay, I'm Robert LeBrant. I normally go by Rob, but that would be confusing today, so we're not going to do that. I'm going to go by Robert. Our company, Traceit LLC, provides technology-agnostic identification and marking solutions. We work with their supplier to understand their business process, and then we come to a solution that fits those needs for permanent and non-permanent marking solutions. I provided the content, one of the providers of content in that section of the white paper in particular.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. I'm Dave Horvat with Real-Time Intelligence. We provide a platform for supply chain visibility and analytics, and presently tracking about 14 billion transactions through the platform for purposes of shaving out waste and driving efficiency in the supply chain.
Thank you, Dave. I'm Youssef Kamel, very pleased to be here with you. I'm with Wirepass. Wirepass is a Finnish company specialized in wireless connectivity. We actually equip around 10 million devices today. We have 200 partners doing around 2,000 products already deployed on the market. And we specialized in low power mesh technology for IoT and for smart tracking in particular.
My name is Katie Koch. I am with IFCO Systems. I am the digital solutions person for North America. IFCO is, we consider ourselves the global leader in reusable packaging when it comes to meat, eggs, and produce. So we have our assets in North America, South America, Japan, and Europe.
So, hello, my name is Tobias Hüffel. I'm from PMG Labels. Our company is in Goodyear, Arizona. We are affiliate. We have also a production site in Germany, near Munich. And as you recognize, I'm a German, so it's a little bit difficult for me to speak here, but I think I can handle it.
Thank you, thank you. And as you can see, we have a good representation across the complete ecosystem, from labeling to data systems to connectivity systems, and then Katie from IFCO, actually a user of the technology to provide a service. Myself at Qualcomm, we're a broad-based, obviously, technology company. You may best know, if you know about them, for Snapdragon, and what goes inside of handheld computers, including the industrial handheld, which enables scanning and digital sensing of the environment. And the reason I wanted to just tie this together is that we have a representation across, as the white paper talks about the total system, for how, for what, for why, and then how do you get started. You can hear from what in the introductions that the panelists are active in their companies, deploying actual solutions and systems that are solving problems. So the white paper does a very comprehensive review of that with a very complete appendices with, given its technology, a unified definition of all the different terms and technologies, because IoT is a 3-letter acronym that means a lot of things to a lot of people. But most importantly, it's about how do you apply it at a system level. Earlier today, Sergey talked about what they do as a company. They're here. And then Orbis gave a presentation a little bit about how their closed loop analysis of reusable containers, and that was a very good introduction. Of course, Tim started this morning off with the industry survey. The industry survey, you can look at it too. There's a URL, and it will break down exactly what's happening in terms of the growth and whatnot. But for our panel today, we're going to focus on the white paper. And so let me kick it off by first just putting it to Rob. And by the way, you know Rob's to call Robert, but we're so familiar we're going to call each other familiar names. So to Rob and Tobias, they're the labeling people team. I represent the labeling aspects of the white paper. So Rob, can you tell us a little bit more about what specifically Traceit does, what your company does, and how it fits into what the importance of your technology to the reusable packaging industry?
Okay, great. Well, I don't think anybody in here needs to be told how important barcoding is in today's world, in the modern data capture. Quality data is probably the most important thing that we can bring to the space. So our company works with an individual as a client or an organization as a client, defines what it is they need out of the process. What are the business processes that they are currently utilizing? We map those processes. We look at where barcoding, RFID, physical marking in all forms, not just labels, but direct part marking. It could be either visible or invisible, or covert or overt, depending on whether you're trying to defeat counterfeiting, for example. And once we know that, we can look at what solutions might best fit your needs. We look at how the data can be structured inside of the barcode. We looked at the durability and permanency of the marking solution. If it's just a short-term mark, an adhesive label of many varieties might work. If it's looking for something that's 20 or 30 years in length, I work for the Department of Defense. We had the B-52 for how many years? So we need marking that's good for the long term in that kind of application. So what we did is we look at what people need to do it. It can be a combination. If you're a large pooler, you may need permanent identification until that asset is recycled. And if you're the user of pooled assets, you may need it from the time you receive it to the time you return it, and that's it. That's all you care about. So those are very different scenarios. We look at all those and recommend it. We're technology agnostic, meaning we don't really care which marking technology. We want to do the best possible for you. And we have partners and we have knowledge, 20 years of knowledge in the industry about who you should be working with to solve those problems.
And these are, as what Rob outlined, are some of the topics that are covered inside the white paper, and we'll expand on it quite a bit. And Tobias, from your PMG labels, what do you have to add to what Rob indicated?
So yes, so we at PMG Labels, so our affiliate was founded in 2008, so we have a lot of experience in this labels, so foils, adhesive, and printing quality, and we can make sure that the label is on the product till its end of its life, and it's getting more and more important that it can also be without issue recycled. But also we are also encoding our labels direct in our facilities, and we develop a lot, and we can everything test. So if a customer likes his log file or something like this, we can support it.
And what Tobias is laying out is the adhesion between the labeling, and it's a hybrid label. It's a QR code plus RFID, correct?
Yes, correct. We can combine this. We can only make an RFID label without anything on it, or a classical barcode labels, but usually it's a double. So you have the RFID and also optical, that you can scan it when something is not working, for example, when it's damaged, that you can.
Very good. And just from a perspective of the application looking forward, what are some of the things, Tobias, that PMG Labels is looking towards in terms of the near-term future, next few years, in terms of enhancing your product and deployment?
So we think it. So it's not only thinking. It is so. So it's getting bigger and bigger. So much more quantities, much more the inquiries that someone is interested in these things, and also expanding. So we have also a lot of special interests that someone likes this tailored solution.
Very good. Thank you. And in terms of Rob, same thing for yourself. Looking at it from Trace's point of view, what do you see coming down the road for your company and what you're doing?
I think the most exciting applications going forward are what we can use physical marking, whether it is a label or whether it's a direct part mark, and how we can incorporate anti-counterfeiting technologies and authentication into those capabilities, whether it's incorporating a submicron or nanoparticles, or whether it's incorporating, in some cases, biological material, which we don't do a lot with, but certainly incorporating those so that you know that this is the authentic item. Because you can counterfeit an item, you can certainly counterfeit a label. So additional technologies are needed. And integrating those into a single platform where you can have one solution that does both the asset identification, the long-term life data exchange in a structured way inside the barcode so that it's unambiguous and captured as opposed to, say, just a text string. And then being able to, through the product lifecycle, use that technology not only to authenticate it as an item, but even to authenticate or identify the material once it's gone into the recycling process. Because as we all know, loss through the recycling process is a big issue, whether it's theft, whether it's sold off to some secondary item to be supplier to be ground up is a big issue right now.
Thank you. So provenance and then traceability and then ensuring, if you will, that through the whole closed loop process that there's integrity within that process, right? And Katie, just you at IFCO, you make use of labels, correct? And what are some of the most important attributes of the labels in your system at IFCO as it relates to what both PMG and Trace have talked about? Just you have some observations about how it impacts IFCO?
Absolutely. So I think what's most critical for us with the labeling and the RFID equipment is the supply chain transparency that we're able to provide. So we're able to provide this transparency not only to the growers, making the food, but also to the retailers. So it provides transparency and traceability for both growers and retailers. And then also it provides accountability and traceability for us within our own service centers. So we know when things are getting rewatched, we know when there's labels that are coming off and who they're coming from. And it also provides a lot of operational efficiencies as well within IFCO that then we can pass on to our growers and our retailers as it pertains to how fast we're turning our assets. If we're losing assets, we know where we're losing them, when we're losing them, how long they're lost. And then that in turn improves not only IFCO's ROI, but it also allows the grower and the retailers to work together to understand where loss, where turn rates are high, and we can improve those efficiencies.
Great. So data insights into their operation, seeing things that if you don't measure it, you can't improve it, can't monitor. You have to monitor it, correct? So, Josef, real quick, just on this transitioning from labeling now to the IoT technology and the way you give voice to assets, machine to machine. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Katie, what you've said is super interesting because actually the more you want to build visibility, the more you need technology that can actually provide that visibility in a seamless way without requiring an infrastructure and by having some tags that you can locate on either the pallets or the reusables or even in order to trace the goods themselves. And then, of course, if you have that capability, you can build up the amount of information that you get from the supply chain. You can build up a much better relationship between the provider of pallets and reusable and the producer and the retailer. and also provide much higher value if you, for example, can collect temperature or humidity or shocks or tilts of the goods that are being transported. It can really enrich the value you have for this kind of systems. And this is really what WirePass is really focusing on, is to provide this end-to-end hardware system that is super easy to install, super low cost, and has a long battery lifetime.
Thank you. We're going to come back to some of this and fill in some of the applications and whatnot, but to complete it, let's talk about data. So Dave, talk a little bit about what our real-time intelligence does. I mean, the name is pretty explanatory, but let's expand a little bit about how you take the information from the labels, the RFIDs,
Sure.
the IoT technologies, aggregate that, and give insights.
Absolutely, thank you, Rob. And I'm going to actually start with picking up where Katie kind of left off here, because I think there's a really important aspect of that answer on the tags as well that come into play here. And the title of this session has the word reusable packaging systems in it. And I think a key word here is systems. And systems, by definition, has multiple moving parts. And it's really important as a takeaway to recognize that there are a lot of pieces that make these solutions successful. And to build on Katie's response on the tags, they start with a very aggressive testing process to ensure that they have a tag that's going to live for the life of the asset. Because it doesn't do any good if a tag falls off and it's laying on the floor somewhere at a facility. It's no longer tracking anything. As we move into where we come into play and we pick up the data from these sensors that Yusuf was talking about, is you have to recognize there is a very large volume of data that's going to be flowing. And that is both a liability and an asset. It's a liability if you don't have systems prepared to handle that volume of data. It'll grind you to your knees when you try to assemble that data into usable analytics. And that's where we've really focused the last couple of years on, is recognizing the sheer volume of data that sensors are going to throw at you. And here's where the opportunity comes into play. Once you've been able to harness and manage how to receive all that data, then you start to drop in the business analytics on top of it, and you start to look at insights that impact or actionable insights that give you information to do something with. It might be analyzing where the damage is happening. Why are my assets coming back broken? If I've got a very complex supply chain with a lot of different trading partners, I can start to analyze what trading partners are damaging my assets, what products are doing the most damage. Maybe it's cleaning. Maybe I want to analyze why I have to clean certain times more than others. There's a whole host of data that you then can take action on. So the big thing is getting the data captured and then understanding all of your opportunities. You might have gone into your initiative with a primary objective, and that is the leading source of your ROI. What we have found is, and Katie can attest to this, we had achieved the primary ROI, but there's a secondary, a tertiary, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, once you start understanding all the data that you have.
Great. Well, let's go, Katie. Can you share some of the other insights?
Yeah, so I'm not going to sit up here and say that implementing RFID and supply chain transparency and trackability has been easy, especially within IFCO. I'm going to tell you right there, when you give people information, real-time information, and they don't like it, right? So here we go. Here's information. Our loss is really high. Our turn rates are really high. So that's why it's really important to have a strategic partner like RTI, because we can validate the data for them. So we can go into confidence intervals and compliance with the data and the reads. We can tell them that this service center, this wash line was down and we didn't get reads for this time. So I will say that's probably one of the first steps in all this new kind of technology that we've embraced. And it gives us the ability to be trusted by our growers and by some of the biggest retailers within North America and globally. And the excitement and the confidence that has built with having this ability to give them this data has now built into we're putting RTI's equipment in retail locations. Growers want it in their locations because they want to see exactly from when it leaves IFCO, when it goes to a grower to a retailer back to the service center. They want to know exactly what that traceability is, what their metrics are, if they lost it, if it was damaged. And so it's been an incredibly important strategic relationship to have with our not only our hardware provider and the analytics that RTI provides, but also it allows us to build a stronger strategic partnership with our growers and our retailers.
Thank you for that, Katie. Just very briefly, let's talk a little bit about the regulatory landscape and what's going on with the Food and Drug Administration in North America. Of course, Tim earlier today had some of the pan world initiatives are going on around reusability, but the FDA has the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. We're probably the people here maybe involved a little bit about that. But let's talk a little bit about the FSMA 204, which is the Food Modernization Security Act. FSMA. And so Katie, how's FSMA going to impact IFCO and your operations, and what are some of the challenges?
Yeah, so it's coming sooner than later, and so we're working with RTI and obviously with Tobias and team on the labeling and the traceability, because we want to be the leader. We want to be the leader with our growers and our retailers on embracing this technology. So we have to have the traceability to say exactly where these assets went, what temperature they were at, and so that's why everybody's embracing the technology in the way that they are, because this will be the end result. So if we can get out ahead of it, we can build the analytics, if we can build the trust, if we can build the technology in the locations that we need it to, it will only benefit our growers and our retailers down the road when the FSMA 204 comes into effect.
Thank you for that. Now, you used a really important word, which is trust. And earlier, Rob was talking about the trusting of, they're now being counterfeited, that it's the provenance, that there's traceability there. Obviously, that's very important for all of us here around security. Joseph, with your technology, network admission control, self-organizing, and that you don't get a rogue actor in there, right? Security. So, from a trust point of view, David, for RTI, how important is it for you to have trusted data that is actionable, that represents actually what happens? Is that important to you?
Well, there's a lot of answers to that, and I'm going to give you one that bubbles up to the top of my mind right away. As Katie alluded to, early on, people were objecting to that data is not real. We're not losing that much. We're not taking that long. And it was arguable for the first 10,000 transactions, 100,000 transactions, million transactions. Once you start processing past 1 billion transactions in a month, it's hard to argue the facts. And some of your constituents have tried, I think, at times to disprove certain facts, and you can't. The data is the data. And having trustworthy data allows you to move forward, to take action in your supply chains confidently with expected results. That's a big deal. That's a big deal in what's going on.
Excellent. And that's so true, as we all know the saying, in God we trust, others bring data. And so, grabbing the data, and now that we have, as you can see here, not just a white paper, but actually that white paper is based upon experts and their experiences and use cases. Let's switch this for a few minutes here. Let's talk about the white paper. And Rob, what for you was your biggest takeaway as you read the white paper, outside of maybe what you contributed, but something stand out?
Yeah, I think one of the issues in the white paper is not to be too internally focused. If you read the white paper and you think about all of the things and the capabilities that it talks about, you need to think about the potential solution set much larger than you. Just like you were talking about in terms of, I expected to use the data for this, but because I involved the stakeholders, I involved the customers, I thought of a bigger universe, I'm able to apply that data in many more ways. And because I'm using automatic data capture, it has high data integrity. And if I can connect the identification of the assets to the product or payload that asset's carrying, then I can take that information forward and have trusted results as where it was going. I think going through that process, particularly throwing in the sensor data and other things we talked about, gives you a real true picture of from lust to dust, from beginning to end.
Excellent. Dave, yourself.
For me, it was an absolute pleasure working with the broad spectrum of participants to put this paper together over the last 6 months. And what comes from that is the recognition that we should all stretch our boundaries of the scope of our potential opportunity. You heard the word device agnostic, the words device agnostic a couple of times during the conversation today. And what that should mean to all of you is there's so many different areas to collect data. It might not just be RFID. You might be banding together RFID and temperature sensors or accelerometers to track things drying, or there's a whole bunch of different sensors that we can merge together into one platform and understand a complete picture. So my encouragement is to use the paper for looking at the possibilities. And again, going back to what I suggested earlier about how we can find different ROIs within our supply chain by pulling together the expertise of people like you see on the stage here.
Yusuf, yourself?
Yeah, on my side, I totally echo what you've been saying. It's a fantastic compilation of all the technologies that are available, but also relating to the use cases that they apply it, right? I think there's so many papers that are very focused on a single technology, or not necessarily explaining what that technology is really useful for. I think what is important here is that this joint effort has led us to be very humble and really attach a use case to a technology, and that breadth of technologies that you have in the paper, you can read the paper really for specific items that you're interested into. You don't need to read 100% of the paper at once, right? You can really focus on areas that you need to learn. So it's great.
Yeah, and on that front, just a few factoids about factoids are false facts. Let's face it. It's like Android, right? It's not really human. So we use factoids. So it's 98 pages. That's a fact. There's over 90 some external references. We have an appendices that I don't know how many terms we defined in the appendices, but the appendices are so big, anyway, they're divided into 3 sections that talks about things about the industry, things about the technology, and then some stuff about the industry associations and the like that are all involved. So it's a very comprehensive thing. So with that segue, Katie, I know you tried to print out the paper. By the way,
try to print this paper on your home computer.
Don't print out our paper. Just read it in PDF or online. We didn't print one out because we are reusable packaging and we are green. So but we do have the Todd is holding up their QR code. So we won't go into the technology of URIs and quick response code and coding and whatnot. I guess we could if we wanted to. We won't. But Katie, with that segue, and the fact that you've gone through the paper, what were some of the takeaways for you as someone that lives this day in and day out?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is, IFCO being a global leader in what we're doing is having a multi-layered approach, and that's really in all the sections within the white paper. It's pronounced as there's not a one-size-fits-all for these solutions, especially when you're going between North America, Europe, Japan, South America. And it's okay to test things, and it's okay to fail when we're testing, because until we do the testing and until we work with our partners like we do, we don't know that. So having that multi-layered approach when it comes to the FSMA, when it comes to the hardware, when it comes to the data, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So I would say that was probably the biggest takeaway. Is it gives you a little bit of you can take a breath and be like, it's okay. This is how we need to do it. We need to test. And knowing we have the right partners, we'll continue to test and we'll find the right solutions for the folks that we're working with.
Excellent. And Tobias, what did you take from the white paper?
Yes, I think it's a very good overview, and also to look that it's not so simple. You have to make one step after another and look at it, that you see there is not only a simple sticker with a number and a code on it. It's a huge process was behind of this labels or this data. This big
right.
thing.
So there's a lot. Obviously, there's a lot involved in technology, as we all know. It's an alphabet soup. There's a lot of different, as we were just talking, David and Yusuf was talking about, looking at the use cases at your particular case, looking at how to get started in terms of who are the stakeholders, how do you bring the right team together to do the assessment of what your objectives are, what's the problem you're solving, and what are your outcomes and what you're going for. And so with that said, as we sit here and think about what the next steps are, let's just spitball for a little bit. What would you like to see the technology working group work on next?
Yeah, so when we built this, we tried really hard, believe it or not, after that description, to make it not an expert's guide. We were trying to make it something that someone who is not trained in these technologies could pick it up and actually use it. Not to make a decision necessarily, but to guide them into what to look for when they're looking for a solution and a solution provider, not to ask the right questions, not to solve the problem. What I think we need to do next is provide more hooks into the other resources out there. We do reference like AIM, for example, and they have a tremendous amount of resources out there. But the more we can take this user guide and essentially map it to resources outside of itself will allow you as a user of this document to go and get those resources and get that help. Because you're busy designing packages and other things, you're not busy trying to figure out how to identify or how to connect data necessarily. That's not what you do. Just like I was a mechanical engineer trained, I certainly wouldn't want me designing any of the things that are out there because I haven't done it for many years. But I likewise wouldn't want you trying to figure out what kind of marking technology makes sense when you don't do that. That's not what you do.
Thank you. And Dave, for yours, what are some of the next steps that people in the audience could do as it relates to the white paper and applying it to their problem, from your perspective?
I think that the application to the real world problems, if they can use that to turn it into the what to do, how to calculate ROIs, I find a lot of people trying to venture into technology go right towards what is it going to cost, as opposed to what is my reward. And I think more focus needs to be put on flushing out the reward side of the spend for technology than on the actual spend. Because there's so much opportunity and people don't understand, like I mentioned earlier, the secondary, tertiary, fourth savings opportunities get missed because you get locked into the cost of the technology. So that's one area. And then as far as I think you asked, I'm going to add on to what you asked, Rob. I want to see us move into AI, blockchain, and the realization of those technologies as they're coming at us. Because right now it's the wild, wild west of those two areas alone. And trying to understand where they're going to present us opportunities over the next 5 years is an area that I'd like to make us look towards as we help people.
Thank you. And by the way, just for everybody's benefit, we did actually talk about blockchain in the white paper.
We did.
And as well as some of the things that are coming down the pike on AI and machine learning and appliance. Yosef.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's not about only listing the technologies. It's also and essentially about the value that these technologies are bringing to the end customers and how you calculate and evaluate that value for a company like IFCO that would like to start like you implementing these kind of processes. The main question these guys are asking is, what is the return I will get? Not necessarily focusing on cost, not necessarily focusing on technology, but what are the use cases? Why is there value in exploiting them? And what is the process I want to enter in order to prove that value rather than prove the concept itself?
Yeah, excellent. And as we augment the technology or augment the functionality of these assets by imbuing them with RFID or an active sensor like the WirePass Massive, and coupling that, and you get a sense that there's a need for diversity in technology, right? No one technology is going to solve every aspect of your problem. And it really is a balance between that cost of investment and then the return on that investment in terms of the insights. So obviously there's no one solution, and you have to take a very, again, systematic approach, right? Because it is a system, and look at what the problem is, what are the available technologies, and obviously a good thing to do is to follow up with the vendors and to talk to them, to engage with companies here, companies out in the reusable packaging pavilion that are bringing solutions to market. So wrapping up, because we've got just a few minutes left here, so I wanted to give a few minutes for any questions that the audience may have that they would like to direct towards the panel.
I think you have one in the back, Rob.
You want to do it? We're dealing with interference. Interference here, I take it. So what I was just going to say is that, are there any questions from the audience? And we've got a microphone here, and then Amanda, here, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, a lot of the conversation today has been about the track and trace of the actual returnable or reusable packaging. That's definitely got the, I'm sure that was the eye of the ROI, on the white paper. But what about is there also the association of the contents in the reusable packaging for that purpose as well? I mean, is that what happened at IFCO as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll turn this over to Katie, because if you think about IFCO and the fact that they're providing a reusable asset to move fresh produce, which can spoil if it's out of spec. So it's not, so Katie, can you speak a little bit to that?
Are we all on mic?
Absolutely. So yeah, that's IFCO's obviously number one concern is, you can hear me, right? Is food safety. That's number one. So we actually have equipment and traceability at all of our wash centers. So when we wash our crates when they return, we're able to read that. And I mentioned a little bit ago, we're able to see rewash, and we're able to track to make sure all of our assets are getting washed. They're getting washed properly. They're not washed properly. We actually have the technology that can tell us that, and then it continues to go through the rewash. So that's been a critical part of this RFID technology that we've implemented, because that's a huge cost to us if we're rewashing things. It's a huge cost to us if we have a partner that puts labels on that we can't get off. And that's also what's leading into the FSMA stuff that we're going into, is this traceability and making sure things are washed, that they're clean, that they're sanitized, and when they go back out, they're meeting those traceability requirements that are put upon us and our growers. So our growers are trusting us when they put their food in these containers, that they're clean, that they're safe, they're not going to break. And that's what also the RFID allows us to track, is along that process, if that does fail, where is it happening? And then we can provide that before it goes into any retail location and someone purchases that food.
Okay, and then just, Joseph, can you speak a little bit towards active monitoring of temperature and some of the use cases?
You're good. Just these two.
Just us.
Oh, you turned yours off.
Is it okay now? Yeah, very good. Yeah, no, I think thanks, Rob. So basically, we have also end customers that are also requiring this kind of data. Not necessarily the pooling companies, but for example, the fresh good companies want to maximize the shelf time of their fresh goods. But in order to do that, they need to understand if the fresh goods are transported in the right conditions. Are they living in the right temperature, within the right temperature range? Do they receive any shocks? Do they tilt? And are they stocked at the right location, and so on and so forth? But also optimizing that whole food chain. And if you want to do that, of course, the value that we're talking about when you have one sensor per pallet versus the actual goods value is insignificant, and the ROI comes in faster also in those kind of use cases.
Yeah, just to clarify, I was getting more on using the technology for inventory, knowing what inventory of items, what's actually in it from that perspective.
Okay.
Not necessarily tracking it from obviously you're tracking it from, any excursions on temperature or, shipments, tip, that sort of thing, or the packaging getting clean.
Yeah.
That was obvious.
Yeah.
So just real quick while it's passing, one of the things you can do to resolve that is make sure that you properly identified the reusable container and that your clients can utilize that identification in a unique way, a globally unique way, so that when they consume that numbering system or whatever you choose to use and associate it with the content, you get a parent-child relationship.
That's what I was
helps you
asking.
do that, absolutely.
Yeah, so
if you just give them a pallet with nothing on it, that's very difficult to do.
I don't do that. So I was actually going to build onto that. So usually there's a cost or process prohibitive reason that you're not actually tagging the something inside of the something. Whether it's the price point, you're just not going to put even a 5-cent tag on something that only costs 20 cents. Or there's a process in the case of vegetables or produce where you're not going to put a label on a banana. So there's a cost or process reason you can't get that association. So that's where the digital association comes in, and you catch it in the ERP where you're doing association, but then you have to make sure that the break or separation from that asset when it's done carrying whatever it was carrying takes place. And then you can track, and that's where FSMA, it's going to apply to FSMA, so that I can look at a crate in a grocery store and trace it all the way back to the growing field. But once that's done, I need to disassociate that, but hang on to all that traceability data for future reference.
And thank you for that question, and just the obvious bias that the moderator had, but we got there. So thanks for hanging with us. Any other questions? See, this is all about sharing ideas without compromising your intellectual property. But the point is, IoT is a team sport. And the only way we're going to be successful in achieving the objective of two things: feeding the world very efficiently and having a sustainable way of feeding the world, right, is going to mean that we all work together. Sorry, I've got my soapbox here to just give a little bit of motivation for why I think I can speak on behalf of the panel and the working group that's for us the motivation. It is about being in business and making a profit and making our owners happy. But at the end of the day, it really is to strive towards something bigger than us, and that is really how to feed the world and have the least amount of impact on it. So first off, thank you all for taking time out of your schedule. Again, go back to Todd is holding it up, scan the QR code. That is a URI, Universal Resource Identifier, on it that'll take you right to the technology hub, and you can download the white paper. We asked for just a little bit of information, but we are GDPR compliant, so we don't sell it. The association doesn't. And I wanted to thank all the panelists for their participation and travel to this event. Hopefully you found it interesting, engaging, and the fact is, where can you get everybody involved in a closed-loop supply chain, but at the Reusable Packaging Learning Center. So, thank you RPA for sponsoring this, and for everybody for coming today. Okay.